talking about a few thousand jars and lids. We need to do a purchase order of 1 million.
Rosé sold out also in less than an hour.
44 minutes. I was shocked. Then we prepped for the second seasonal drop and 10x'd our inventory. That sold out in a couple hours. This is your baby and this is your brand. That was a crew of 80 people.
And the plan is to go global.
Yes, absolutely.
Meghan Markle recently gave an interview with Bloomberg, hoping to highlight her business empire and convince everyone she's a sharp entrepreneur. Instead, the conversation turned into 8 utterly disastrous moments where her business claims unraveled so dramatically that it's both laughable and cringeworthy at the same time. From insisting her rose sold out in exactly 44 minutes to declaring she scaled from thousands of units to millions within a matter of months, Meghan confidently pushed one exaggerated business tale after another. And just wait until claim number 4. When she starts discussing her Netflix deal, the contradiction between what she asserts and what she accidentally lets slip is so shocking you'll want to replay it to be sure you heard it right. We went through every claim she made during that interview, and her own words reveal just how fabricated these stories seem to be. So buckle up, because we're about to break down 8 moments where Meghan Markle unintentionally exposed that her business empire might rest on little more than wishful thinking. Let's jump right into what may be the most outrageous claim of the entire conversation. And that's saying a lot, given the rest. Meghan wants everyone to believe her rose product achieved a level of success that would make even the most viral marketing campaigns jealous. She claims her luxury lifestyle item sold out in exactly 44 minutes. And the way she frames this so-called achievement shows just how far removed from actual business dynamics she appears to be. For perspective, this is a little-known lifestyle brand releasing a seasonal product without a loyal customer base, without major retail partnerships, and likely with a modest marketing budget. This isn't Apple launching a new iPhone, or Nike releasing a limited edition sneaker to millions of eager customers waiting online. This is a relatively obscure brand, one most people hadn't even heard of until this interview, supposedly generating so much demand that their stock vanished in under an hour. The oddly specific figure of 44 minutes is the first major red flag. Not about 45 minutes, not within an hour, but exactly 44 minutes. That level of precision either suggests an advanced real-time tracking system or, more likely, a number chosen deliberately for dramatic effect rather than one that reflects genuine sales data.
A sold out also in less than an hour.
44 minutes. I was shocked.
But this is exactly where her claim starts to completely unravel. For a brand new lifestyle product to sell out in 44 minutes, there would need to be substantial pre-existing demand, a well-coordinated marketing strategy, celebrity-backed promotions, or some powerful combination of factors that genuinely drive consumer urgency. Yet, Meghan portrays this as something that happened naturally, fueled only by word of mouth and a bit of social media buzz. The numbers simply don't add up either. Even if we give her the benefit of the doubt and assume a relatively small inventory of just a few thousand units, selling out that quickly would require an average of dozens of purchases every single minute without any hiccups, system overloads, or payment delays. That level of consistent, high-volume activity demands enterprise-grade e-commerce systems and a robust customer service operation, not a fledgling brand with limited reach.
How do you keep up with demand?
When you sell out that quickly, it's a double-edged sword because it's an incredible thing to happen for any small business.
What makes this claim even more suspicious is the way she expresses surprise over the sellout speed. If you're running a business and you genuinely have no idea how much demand your product might generate, that points to a serious lack of market research, customer insights, or basic business planning. Successful entrepreneurs usually have detailed forecasts about expected demand, conversion rates, and inventory requirements. But the real blow to her credibility comes when she says that selling out so fast was actually a problem because it prevented them from collecting meaningful data and insights on which products were most in demand. This either indicates that her inventory management and tracking systems are woefully insufficient, or that she's simply fabricating these figures without a real grasp of how proper e-commerce analytics actually function.
At the same time, you don't get the same metrics and learnings about which SKUs and products are the most coveted.
The entire story becomes even more ridiculous when you consider that if a luxury lifestyle brand truly experienced such explosive demand, it would spark widespread media attention, social media trends, consumer chatter, and significant industry notice. Viral product launches typically create hashtags, waiting lists, resale markets, and broad cultural buzz. Yet, as ever seems to have achieved this so-called record-breaking sellout without generating any of the usual signals that accompany authentic viral success. This isn't just about questioning a single sales figure. It's about recognizing when someone builds business narratives that sound impressive but crumble under basic scrutiny. The 44-minute sellout claim is either wildly exaggerated or completely fabricated, and either way, it reveals how Meghan approaches business credibility with the same loose relationship to facts she's displayed in other aspects of her public image. But that 44-minute sellout was only the start of her mathematical absurdities. What comes next pushes her credibility from questionable to outright unbelievable. According to her, after the initial Rose sellout, they prepared for their second seasonal launch by multiplying their inventory tenfold. Let's pause and break down what that means in business terms. If they began with just a few thousand units, multiplying by 10 would mean managing tens of thousands, along with the added costs, storage needs, supply chain complexity, and financial risks of scaling at that level. But here's where her claim becomes downright implausible. She insists that this inventory, which was supposedly projected to last for weeks under normal retail expectations, sold out in just a couple of hours. That would represent one of the most dramatic demand surges in consumer goods history. Yet she presents it as if it's just another ordinary day for her brand.
We prepped for the second seasonal drop and 10x'd our inventory and thought for sure that would at least last for a couple weeks.
The logistics alone make this claim highly implausible. Increasing inventory tenfold isn't as simple as ordering more stock. It requires securing 10 times the warehouse capacity, 10 times the packaging supplies, 10 times the shipping resources, and 10 times the customer service infrastructure to manage that surge in volume. Small lifestyle brands don't just scale operations by a factor of 10 without massive adjustments and substantial capital investment. But even if we suspend disbelief and assume their infrastructure could somehow handle this sudden expansion, the demand math still doesn't add up. To move tens of thousands of units in just a few hours, you'd need thousands of simultaneous transactions processing smoothly without website crashes, payment glitches, or fulfillment delays. That's the kind of e-commerce volume managed by large-scale enterprises, not by a modest startup running on basic systems.
Sold out in a couple hours.
What makes this story even more questionable is the complete lack of any visible cultural impact from this so-called phenomenon. When consumer products truly experience the kind of explosive demand Meghan describes, they generate massive social media traction, news headlines, influencer coverage, and broad consumer buzz. People talk about it, share their experiences, and flood online platforms with posts about trying to get their hands on these highly sought-after items. Yet, as ever seems to have supposedly achieved record-breaking sellout speeds without leaving any of the usual digital traces that accompany authentic viral demand. There were no trending hashtags, no angry customers complaining about site crashes, no resale markets forming, and no significant cultural conversation around these allegedly impossible-to-find products. The timeline she outlines would also demand a level of operational sophistication that completely contradicts the way she portrays the business. She describes as ever as a personal, artisanal brand where she's closely involved in recipe creation and quality oversight, yet simultaneously claims it can handle tens of thousands of orders within hours without a single operational snag.
And suddenly the conversation goes from a few thousand jars and lids to we need to do a purchase order of 1 million.
This tenfold inventory claim isn't just an exaggeration. It demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of how retail businesses actually operate. Successful companies base their growth on careful demand analysis, market research, and gradual scaling decisions informed by data and customer behavior. They don't arbitrarily multiply inventory by massive factors and simply hope it works out. The fact that MEGHAN presents this as a rational business strategy instead of acknowledging how unrealistic it sounds shows either a lack of understanding about retail operations or a casual relationship with the truth that permeates her entire business narrative. Either way, it suggests her so-called business empire may exist more in her imagination than in any verifiable reality. And just when it seems her business claims can't get any more outlandish, she delivers perhaps the most absurd statement of the entire interview. After talking about this supposed explosive scaling, she claims their discussions have shifted from handling thousands of units earlier in the year to placing purchase orders for millions of units now. Let's break down what she's actually suggesting happened with her artisanal jam and rose business in just a few short months. The figure she mentions would put as ever in the same league as major consumer packaged goods companies with decades of established market presence. A purchase order for 1 million units isn't just a large number. It's a massive commitment that demands extensive manufacturing capacity, immense capital investment, complex supply chain coordination, and enterprise-grade distribution networks. This level of scaling typically takes well-established companies years to achieve, if they ever reach it at all. But here's what makes her claim truly nonsensical. To justify an order of that size, you need hard evidence of demand from reliable retail partners, signed distribution deals, or overwhelming pre-orders guaranteeing sales. You don't suddenly decide to produce 1 million units of artisanal jam because a few online launches did well. The financial implications alone make the story implausible. Manufacturing 1 million units would require millions of dollars upfront for raw materials, production, packaging, and warehousing. The working capital needed would be immense, and no reputable manufacturer would greenlight such an order without substantial financial backing and verified demand. Storing and distributing that volume would call for warehouse facilities spanning hundreds of thousands of square feet, industrial-scale operations with advanced inventory management, not the type of setup that comes out of a Montecito lifestyle brand headquarters.
And that's a huge jump in just a few months of starting a business.
What makes this even more absurd is that MEGHAN frames the idea of producing 1 million units as if it's a natural step forward from her earlier claims of selling just a few thousand. There's no acknowledgement of the massive operational, financial, and logistical leap that separates these two scales of business. It's like saying you went from pedaling a bicycle to flying a commercial jet in just a few months. The complete lack of visible infrastructure to support this supposed expansion exposes just how fictional this narrative really is. If has ever genuinely required manufacturing capacity for 1 million units, there would be evidence. Job postings, warehouse expansions, industry collaborations, and supply chain announcements. None of that exists because none of this is actually happening. But perhaps the most damaging part of this 1 million unit fantasy is how it directly contradicts the very image MEGHAN tries to project about her business. She highlights artisanal quality, personal recipe development, and a close connection between her kitchen and the finished products. You cannot maintain that level of craftsmanship and personal touch while producing millions of units at industrial scale.
I'm exasperated in some ways by that only because it is such a tedious proposition to scale your own home recipe to something at mass and maintain the same, not just quality, but the same flavor that you're able to do.
The 1 million unit claim isn't just an exaggeration or a fleeting moment of wishful thinking. It reflects a complete misunderstanding of how consumer businesses actually scale and grow. Successful companies expand their infrastructure gradually, validate demand with real data, and make scaling decisions based on proven performance, not fantasy. This single claim should cast doubt on every other business story Meghan tells, because anyone who believes that jumping from 1,000-unit inventory to million-unit purchase orders is a reasonable next step clearly lacks even a basic grasp of retail operations, supply chain logistics, and fundamental business planning. It's not just misleading, it's embarrassingly naive about how the real world works. Now, we've arrived at the moment you've been waiting for. And this contradiction is so striking, you may want to hear it twice to fully appreciate how Meghan completely undermines her own narrative of being an independent entrepreneur. In the interview, she paints herself as an empowered businesswoman with full creative control, while portraying Netflix as nothing more than a supportive partner providing infrastructure. She wants people to believe she's the one making every strategic decision, calling all the shots, and steering the direction of her so-called empire, while Netflix merely funds the operation and steps aside. The way she describes this arrangement makes it sound like the perfect setup for someone championing authenticity and independence. According to her, Netflix supposedly said, "This is your baby, your brand," granting her final authority over all creative and business decisions. It's precisely the kind of narrative designed to resonate with those who admire originality and entrepreneurial freedom.
They very graciously said, no, this is your baby and this is your brand. So all creative decisions and final decisions like that end up with.
But then something completely devastating happens. As the discussion goes on, Meghan begins disclosing details about how this partnership truly operates. And every single one of those details tears apart the image of independence she just finished building. She openly acknowledges that Netflix's role extends far beyond merely writing checks. According to her own words, Netflix is providing the suppliers, securing the manufacturing relationships, offering consumer products expertise, managing the distribution networks, and essentially supplying every critical piece of infrastructure that allows her business to exist. If Netflix is controlling the supply chain, the manufacturing, and the distribution, then in what real sense is Meghan actually running an independent business?
They have a lot of incredible suppliers and manufacturers that they are comfortable working.
The contradiction becomes even more damaging when she admits that her original plan was entirely different. She initially wanted to build her own team and run everything on her own terms, which would have given her genuine control and likely far greater financial potential. But then Netflix made what she describes as a compelling pitch and persuaded her to give up that independence. This isn't the story of an empowered entrepreneur safeguarding creative control. It's the story of someone who surrendered their autonomy in exchange for corporate infrastructure, all while continuing to present the illusion that they're still in charge.
That had been my plan. And I thought that it would be great just to build out my own team and really do it purely on my terms.
What makes this contradiction even more damaging is its timing. Just days after this interview, major entertainment industry outlets reported that the Netflix deal had been significantly restructured and downgraded. Instead of the exclusive, fully supportive partnership she portrayed, reports indicated they had entered a much weaker arrangement that allowed them to pitch projects elsewhere if Netflix declined. This means either Meghan wasn't being truthful about the strength of their partnership during the interview, or she was entirely unaware that their deal was on the verge of major changes. Either possibility raises serious doubts about her business judgment and overall credibility.
Netflix is my partner and investor.
The Netflix partnership illusion perfectly highlights the core issue with Meghan's entire business narrative. She wants to portray herself as an independent, authentic entrepreneur, while in reality, relying almost entirely on corporate infrastructure. She seeks recognition for business achievements while outsourcing nearly every element of the actual operations. This isn't just about one deal. It's about recognizing a pattern where someone crafts a public image completely detached from the truth. Her so-called independent business empire is little more than her licensing her name and persona to Netflix's existing consumer products machinery while maintaining the facade of being a self-made entrepreneur. Another example of this tendency to exaggerate arises when she discusses her Netflix show production. Meghan claims that her lifestyle program required a crew of 80 people. She drops this number as though it's a standard detail, but anyone with even a basic understanding of television production knows that a crew of 80 is on par with a major Hollywood film set, not a modest cooking and lifestyle series.
And a huge crew, which I think people often forget. That was a crew of 80 people.
For context, most cooking and lifestyle shows operate with teams of about 15 to 30 people, including camera operators, sound engineers, lighting staff, producers, and general support. Even top-tier cooking shows with highly detailed sets and production elements rarely go beyond 40 crew members. A team of 80 is usually reserved for major scripted productions, complex multi-location shoots, or projects that involve heavy special effects and extensive post-production. That's the kind of crew size you'd expect for a high-budget drama series or a feature film, not for a show focused on making jam and arranging flowers.
Oh, most of it in the pre-production was inspired by recipes that I love to make.
The logistics and expenses of managing a crew of 80 for a lifestyle show would be enormous. Each member needs to be paid, insured, fed, transported, and coordinated, creating a budget that would be completely unrealistic for the type of content she's producing. What makes this exaggeration especially telling is that it offers no real value beyond inflating the perceived scale and importance of her operation. The quality of a lifestyle program isn't determined by how many people are on set, and the average viewer would never even consider asking about crew size in the first place.
Great question. A lot of
This crew size claim aligns perfectly with the rest of Meghan's business narrative. She repeatedly inflates figures, exaggerates scale, and portrays standard business practices as groundbreaking accomplishments. The 80-person crew story is just another instance of her turning something ordinary into what sounds like an extraordinary production milestone. But the real issue isn't just the exaggeration. It's what this ongoing pattern reveals about her approach to credibility and authenticity. It shows a tendency to construct a public image built on embellishment rather than substance. Another striking example comes when Meghan confidently announces her plans for global expansion, despite presenting no evidence of the infrastructure, partnerships, or operational capacity required to make international scaling even remotely achievable for a startup lifestyle brand. When asked about As Ever's future, she insists that going global is definitely part of the plan, delivering this statement with absolute certainty, as though it's the natural next step rather than a massive, resource-heavy undertaking that typically demands years of strategic planning and millions of dollars in investment.
The plan is to go global.
Yes, absolutely.
Global expansion in the consumer goods industry demands far more than simply deciding to ship products overseas. It requires well-established distribution networks, reliable international shipping and logistics, strict customs compliance, extensive local market research, currency and tax management, and securing regulatory approvals in every target market. Most successful brands dedicate years to strengthening their domestic presence before even considering scaling internationally. Yet Meghan portrays global expansion as though it's just a simple decision, showing no real understanding of the operational challenges, financial investment, or meticulous strategic planning that true international growth requires.
Do you want to see it at Target or Williams-Sonoma or...
I think a key retail partner is going to be very valuable.
What makes this global expansion claim especially absurd is that she openly admits they haven't even finalized basic domestic retail partnerships yet. She's still in the process of determining which retailers are the right fit for various product categories, yet somehow speaks confidently about taking the brand worldwide. The contradiction is striking. You can't possibly have a legitimate international expansion strategy when you're still debating whether your products belong on the shelves of Target or Williams-Sonoma. These are foundational distribution decisions that must be settled long before any credible plans for global markets can be made.
You might have exclusivity in certain ones that make sense for the consumables, but as you expand into candles or things throughout the home, where do those live that it makes sense?
The way she casually talks about global expansion while simultaneously exposing fundamental confusion about domestic retail placement highlights just how disconnected her business planning is from operational reality. She makes sweeping international promises while struggling with basic retail strategy decisions at home. This global expansion fantasy aligns perfectly with the rest of Meghan's business narrative, grand visions with little grasp of the practical steps needed to achieve them. It's all ambition without a real execution plan. The same disconnect is clear when she discusses the mixed reviews of her Netflix show. Meghan claims to know her audience so well that negative feedback doesn't matter, insisting her target demographic loves the program. She presents this certainty as if it stems from detailed market analysis, but her explanation makes it obvious she's never conducted genuine customer research or engaged with actual consumer behavior data.
I think I knew who I was trying to meet. And so if you know your audience, you know your demographic, well, they love the show.
The core issue with her audience certainty claims is the complete lack of supporting evidence. She offers no metrics, survey data, or verifiable insights to back her assertions about loyal demographics. Only confident declarations that align with the narrative she wants to project. Rather than relying on actual customer feedback systems, she substitutes speculation for strategy. Her dismissal of critics is especially telling. Suggesting that negative reviewers might secretly be using her recipes isn't market analysis. It's pure conjecture framed as validation. This approach reflects a broader pattern of relying on self-serving assumptions instead of measurable, actionable business intelligence.
I think oftentimes the negative voices, are they saying negative things and then secretly going home and making single skillet spaghetti? Possibly.
What makes this audience certainty delusion so harmful is that it completely blocks meaningful business growth and adaptation. When you convince yourself that criticism only comes from people who secretly enjoy your product, you eliminate any opportunity for real feedback-driven improvement. Thriving businesses rely on analyzing customer behavior, tracking satisfaction data, running focus groups, and evolving based on authentic consumer insights. They don't brush off negative responses as meaningless. They use them as a roadmap for refinement and long-term success.
Why we have a season 2 and why we have more fun coming.
The most revealing part of her audience certainty claims is how they directly contradict her own statements about needing better analytics from her sellout speeds. On one hand, she laments the lack of proper data to measure performance. On the other, she claims absolute confidence about her audience response without any concrete evidence. This inconsistency shows a pattern of using supposed market certainty as a shield to avoid facing uncomfortable truths about product reception and overall business health. It's not genuine confidence rooted in data. It's defensive denial dressed up as business insight. The final example in this pattern of business delusion is her contradictory approach to pricing strategy and market positioning. She tries to present herself as someone who understands both luxury branding and accessibility, but her explanations reveal confusion about the fundamentals of market placement. Meghan shares a sentimental story about her teenage self wishing she could afford BB shirts, claiming this inspired her to price her products more accessibly. She highlights her $9 jam as proof that she's in touch with regular consumers, framing it as something her 15-year-old self could have bought.
There is something I think really important in that the first hero product was this $9 jar of jam, which my 15-year-old self would have been able to buy.
Here's where her pricing narrative collapses entirely. BB was never a budget brand. And those rhinestone BB shirts she references were firmly positioned as luxury teen items. Anyone who could afford them wasn't the kind of consumer debating whether a $9 specialty jam fit their weekly budget. The contradiction becomes obvious when she shifts to describing her brand as premium, highlighting luxury packaging, aspirational messaging, and upscale positioning, while simultaneously claiming that accessibility is her main focus. You can't authentically operate as a luxury lifestyle brand and still position yourself as a champion for budget-conscious consumers.
And if you could get the one with the rhinestone BB, you've really made it. And I always think about that version of
what makes this pricing contradiction especially damaging is that it reveals how contrived her relatability narrative really is. She's framing her teenage experiences buying designer items as proof of understanding financial struggles, which is the opposite of how genuine financial awareness is formed. A $9 jar of jam isn't realistically affordable for families truly managing tight budgets. It falls into premium specialty food pricing, not everyday market accessibility. Her version of accessibility appears to mean making luxury goods slightly less expensive, rather than truly creating products that cater to budget-conscious consumers.
Standpoint, I know where I came from. I remember being in high school and having my after-school job, and all I wanted to do was save up to buy a shirt that said BB.
This pricing strategy contradiction perfectly illustrates everything flawed in Meghan's business narrative. She repeatedly tries to position herself as someone who understands everyday consumers, yet her examples and perspective consistently reveal a disconnect from real-world financial realities. Her entire pricing justification is another instance of crafting a story that sounds appealing in interviews but collapses under basic scrutiny. She isn't truly serving accessible markets or meeting the needs of budget-conscious buyers. She's just slightly lowering luxury prices and presenting it as authentic accessibility. These 8 moments where Meghan Markle's business claims unraveled didn't just expose inconsistencies. They demolished the credibility of her entire entrepreneurial image. From the mathematically impossible 44-minute sellouts to the logistically implausible million-unit purchase orders, from the illusion of a strong Netflix partnership to the fantastical global expansion plans, every statement painted a picture of someone either detached from real business practices or comfortable fabricating success. What makes this Bloomberg interview especially damaging isn't just the individual falsehoods or exaggerations. It's the consistent pattern it exposes in how Meghan constructs credibility, authenticity, and public trust. She inflates numbers, embellishes achievements, and portrays ordinary operations as extraordinary milestones, seemingly confident no one would challenge the basic math or logistics behind them. These 8 exposed claims reveal someone building an entire business persona on fictionalized narratives. Impossible sellout times that contradict retail logic, scaling claims that ignore operational fundamentals, million-unit projections that defy supply chain constraints, and partnerships framed as independence while relying entirely on external control. But perhaps the most telling aspect is how these fabrications align with her broader public narrative over the years. This isn't just about questionable metrics or exaggerated staffing numbers. It's about a pattern of constructing multiple versions of reality, each tailored to the narrative that benefits her at the moment. The Bloomberg interview was intended to position her as a credible entrepreneur and leader. Instead, it showcased someone whose relationship with facts is so loose that she can't keep her own claims straight within one conversation. When success stories sound like fairy tales, when scaling projections defy basic business logic, and when partnerships are misrepresented to mass dependence, it raises doubts about everything else presented as truth. What was the most unbelievable business claim to you? Was it the miraculous 44-minute sellout, the million-unit fantasy, or the illusion of Netflix independence? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us which moment made you question these business stories the most. Smash that like button if this breakdown revealed the truth behind celebrity business myths. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're only getting started with uncovering these carefully crafted success narratives. Stay tuned for the next video, packed with even more revelations that will make you rethink everything you've been told about celebrity business empires.